What's up everybody, it is Sebastian here, back with a little bit of a different kind of video today. We're going to be talking about ultra-low airlines and the pros and cons, specifically talking about SWOOP, which is a Canadian ultra-low airfare owned by WestJet, which is more of a traditional Canadian airline. Now, I personally have flown SWOOP, which is the only ultra-low airfare that I've flown from Hamilton to Winnipeg, Winnipeg to Hamilton twice on reading week to visit family. So that's kind of what got me interested, because there's pros and cons, and I think today we're just going to talk about those pros and cons and see if it would be a good fit for you, because I know a lot of people aren't too sure if it's a good idea or not. So first things first, leg room. A lot of people complain about it. I personally don't notice too much of a difference. I think all airplanes are a little bit uncomfortable to some extent, and the leg room that you get on a more traditional airplane isn't really that much more in economy class, you know, when you're sitting at the back of the plane at least, than SWOOP. Like, and maybe it's a little bit smaller, but not too much of a difference. Obviously, the biggest pro is that it's cheap. It's dirt cheap. I was just looking at prices so I could give you a bit of a comparison. A flight from SWOOP doesn't fly from Toronto, so the closest kind of thing is Hamilton to Winnipeg. There and back, I can get a flight for $140 on SWOOP. On a traditional airline, Air Canada charges $590 right now to go from Toronto to Winnipeg and back on the same dates. Very interesting. I didn't look into it too much, like I didn't scour the internet for cheap deals other than SWOOP, but it's a good, pretty much baseline comparison. Also, some of that could be affected by the current events of the world, but just taking that into account, just an overview. Additional pro might be smaller airports, so ultra-low airlines don't typically get into the big airports like Toronto and Montreal and Vancouver, because it's much more expensive to land there and to fly from there. So they kind of steer to the smaller ones, which is good for people not in the big cities. Now, onto some of the bad things, the cons. You don't get a drink, you don't get peanuts, you don't get nothing like that for free. You can pay for it for sure, but nothing like that is free on a SWOOP flight. Additionally, for me personally, I know I just kind of said this was a pro, but where I am is not close to SWOOP, so I drive 5 hours to Hamilton to get on that plane, as opposed to 2 from Ottawa or 3 to Toronto, so it is quite a bit farther to get to. Some people have better experiences, are closer. That entirely depends on circumstance, so can't really say it's a pro or con. Here's the big con is, obviously you don't get free luggage of any kind. You get a personal item, which is really small, like a little backpack, but if you want to carry on, you pay for that. If you want luggage, you pay for that. Everything is extra on a SWOOP flight. So I think that covers most of it. I haven't really had any kind of bad experience on any of my flights. We had one little bumpy landing, which was fine. That can happen on any plane. The first time I went there, our flight got canceled on the way back, but that was due to a snowstorm in Winnipeg. Not really anybody's fault. I had one delay, which was a mechanical thing, but we left the same day, so it wasn't too big of a deal. And again, those things can happen with anything. Obviously, SWOOP has a smaller fleet of planes, so if they have big mechanical issues, then it might affect it, but that's completely circumstantial. We can't really look at that too much. To sum up, I think it really comes down to what you need and what you want. If you need a ton of luggage, then sure, go ahead, and maybe it's worth it to go from a bigger city and not do ultra-low airfare. If you need to travel with multiple people, if you need to, when you take into account paying for parking, maybe it's not as good. Like, you need to take everything into account. If you're traveling very light, you're just going somewhere nationally, could be the thing for you. It saves me a ton of money, I know, when I do it, because I just take a little bag. I don't pay for luggage because I'm visiting family. If I was going on a tourist kind of destination traveling, it might be a different story. I hope that helps you a little bit. SWOOP kind of flies tons of different places. They go a lot within Canada, and they're starting to expand a bit more to the States and to the Caribbean kind of thing. Ultra-low airlines probably different in your city. Maybe if you're in the States, you probably have quite a few more. If you're in Europe, I know there's some really good deals. But it all kind of comes down to what you need, and if you want to spend that money for a bit more convenience going from a bigger place, or you want to save that money, you're traveling on a budget and you want to be a bit more stingy and not get your luggage or that kind of thing. So thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Have you ever taken SWOOP before? Have you ever thought about it? Did this help you at all? Let me know, and I will see you next time. Peace.
Yes, I like the rhymes.
All of us are born with the miraculous ability to determine the direction from which sounds approach us.
Let us venture into new and uncharted land.
People get shook up, when I'm introduced as God.